Good morning, Broncos fans. You're watching Legends of Mile High, and I am Thomas Hall, where we talk about history and current events on this show. And while we are waiting for all the streams to get set up and started, I just want to say thank you for joining the show. Today, we are going to talk about not giving up on this season. I know that we have reasons to not be vested or interested in what's going on. I mean, we watched a terrible Thursday night game. The Broncos are struggling, but the Broncos shouldn't give up, and fans shouldn't either. I mean, I've invested 40 years into this team, and that's a lot of time to be watching a team, caring about a team, and I'm sure other people have more time invested than I do. But there's a reason. I'm going to give you some reasons why we shouldn't just quite give up on this season yet. And I've heard a lot of pundits out there or other fans saying we should just watch them blow this up, trade away their star players, get some draft picks, and start again. Well, first of all, you can't really do that. You've invested. I mean, we've seen the Broncos invest huge money in Russell Wilson. They've got some stars. If you get rid of your stars for a chance, and I'm saying a chance, I mean it's a coin flip almost, even in the first round, to get another star player, then I mean, that's giving up not just on this season, but on the seasons to come. And that's why you shouldn't give up, because there has been some instances in the past that can show why you don't give up, because a lot of times things of the Broncos have struggled, and it's been a catalyst to something better. Now, I'm not going to talk about the 2012 season like everybody else is talking about, because this season and that season are completely different. I mean, you could tell that Broncos team was on the cusp of exploding into something very good, and they did. They won what the after they went 2-3, they won the rest of their games without a loss. So, I mean, I would not expect that going forward with this Broncos team. The Broncos are injured. They're one of the most injured teams in the NFL right now, if not the most. But I will say, remember when the Green Bay Packers won the Super Bowl in 2012? They had 14 players on injured reserve, and this is back when you couldn't bring them back. You couldn't call them back up. They were done for the year, and I think 6 of them or 5 of them were starters, and they still won the Super Bowl. So there is some hope. There's a glimmer of hope, and I'll talk about that hope, and I'll talk about why it's important not to quit. And I also talk about a person, a player, a legend who never quit in the Mile High Legend. So that's what this show's all about. Not giving up on the season. The Broncos better not give up on the season either. So I'm just like to welcome everybody in. I want to welcome some of the chats, and also want to say thank you to Scott for helping work on the show behind the scenes, making this thing run, making it easier for me. So really appreciate that. And, please, again, like the show or subscribe to Mile High Huddle YouTube. But let's check out a couple of the chats coming in right away early this morning. Jeremy Sean, who, I mean, I just want to say thank you, man, for always being here. Your comments are really good, and they spark some good conversation, and I appreciate it very much. So Jeremy says, "Morning, Thomas. Real fans will never give up on the team. That's what being a fan is." It's true. I mean, like I said, many of us had invested more than half our lives into this team and rooting for this team and being invested in this team and buying the merchandise, and to just give up because they've struggled right now is tough. And people are saying that Hackett's so bad he's worse than Vance Joseph and Vic Fangio, but I'll tell you, I think there is more hope for this team than there was under Joseph and Fangio. And a lot of that has to do with Russell Wilson. And I'll talk a little bit about Russell Wilson and what's going on with him too, if we can get into it. But it's one of those things where there people have struggled during their lives, and I know that this last decade for me has been pretty rough at times, and I haven't given up. I haven't given up on continuing to move forward, and the Broncos shouldn't either. And it's kind of like watching these watching the meme stock people, the AMC apes that they call themselves. I mean, I've researched that quite a bit. It's a very interesting thing, but they've given their hard-earned money to something that they believe in, and they could lose it all, but they could also watch something massively interesting happen. I mean, I guess you'd say something big. So it's something that we've invested our time in a lot of time. So let's not give up, and let's watch the Broncos not give up, because that's the most important thing. I've seen too many teams where they knew they were down bad, and pretty soon they just kind of gave up and they were just getting steamrolled. And I'm afraid that the Broncos defense might end up in that area if the offense can't get it together. So let's hope the offense can get it together. Gail, coming in, Gail Cooley. Thank you very much for coming into the show. I think I've seen you on here before, but if not, welcome. If you're a first timer commenting, I really appreciate it, coming in from Facebook. I'll never give up on my Broncos. Been with them since the 60s. That's that's awesome. Yeah, I mean the 60s. That's amazing. Like, to watch one team and root for one team for that long. It's incredible. I mean, that's incredible devotion. And I'll tell you, the Broncos have rewarded many of us for sticking around for a long time. I mean, you're watching from the 60s. That was some hard times. I mean, the Broncos were not very good. They were struggling to get a foothold, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that their first round draft choices went and signed with the NFL instead of the AFL, and so they didn't get those star players that they needed until Floyd Little finally signed with them. So that was rough, but you stuck with it, and then you were rewarded with the Pat Bowlen years, where we didn't see the Broncos have back-to-back losing seasons, and here we are again. We're watching this team struggle, but there's good things to come, and I'll talk about that. Jeff Dorman coming in. If we had a real coach, then I may agree, but with the bum we have, the chances are slim to none, and Slim just left the building. Season is over. I mean, I'm down on Hackett too. I think he's had his struggles for sure, but I'll point out a couple things that have happened. Teams that win find a way to win at the end. Yeah, and I know Coach Hackett made a bad decision trying to kick a 64-yard field goal, but Brandon McManus needs to make that field goal. I'm sorry. I mean, I don't want to put the blame on him, but he's paid to make the field goal, and he went out there to make it. He was confident that he could, and he missed. And there's been a few other near misses where they should have won games where, their toe stepped out of bounds just before they caught a touchdown pass. They, made some mistakes. So, I mean, yeah, I'm down on Hackett too, but the team needs to respond, and the team has had the opportunity to win it at the end. And that's a huge piece that I'm going to talk about coming up next. I'm going to grab one more comment before I jump into that. Mojo Flex. Mojo Flex, I have not seen you on here before. I really appreciate it. Thank you for coming in from YouTube. Even though we aren't winning the way we want to, I still feel like our chances of success are higher with Russ versus anyone else could get at this point. Is there anyone else? Absolutely. I mean, people are talking about, we'd be better off with Drew Lock and a low paying quarterback. I'm sorry. If we had Drew Lock as our quarterback, we'd be 0-5. I mean, we'd be watching this team go 0-5. I mean, I liked Drew Lock. I liked his tools. He just didn't have it upstairs. He couldn't make the right reads, right decisions, and threw too many interceptions. So yeah, I mean, he could have maybe got a win or two, but I think the Broncos would be sitting where they are right now. But with Russell Wilson, there's a lot more promise for sure. And I know that everybody is piling on Russell Wilson, but he's an elite quarterback, and he's going to get it put together. And yeah, he's hurt right now. He hurt his lat and that kind of thing, but he seems to be responding okay. Still can play the game. I think he's got a little bit of mental issues going on with the confidence. But yeah, I mean, he's one of 36 quarterbacks, and you can read the article I put out there on Mile High Huddle yesterday. I dove into era adjusted quarterbacking since 1960. He's one of 36 quarterbacks out of the few hundred that have played this game since 1960 that have had 4 or more top 400 80th percentile seasons in history since 1960. That's elite company right there. And everybody, all these quarterbacks that were in that, except for a handful, were able to continue to play at a high level after 33 years old. So it's not that he's lost his physical abilities all of a sudden. And there have been quarterbacks that have done that. I mean, I pointed out in the article, there are quarterbacks that just flat out couldn't perform at a certain spot in their career. Could make it a couple of years, or like Neil Lomax, who an incredible quarterback that had to give it up early at age 29, I believe, because of an arthritic hip. But Russell Wilson hasn't been injured. He injured his finger, but I don't see the it's affecting his accuracy or velocity. I mean, it's more timing and throwing it late and making the wrong reads right now, not physical. So that's the promise that I see still in Russell Wilson. He can get it together, start clicking, and things are going to change. So that's number one promise. But I also think that if you look back in the history of the Broncos, there have been a few seasons where they didn't give up and good things happened. Not just that season, but going forward. And again, I'll tell you, I'm not going to talk about the 2012 season. Everybody's talking about that, but that should not be compared to this season. The Broncos are not as good of a team as 2012, and they're much more injured. So I don't know why people keep talking about it, other than, well, Peyton Manning had to get a chance to get his timing and rhythm going and all that. And so there is some similarities, but that team was an incredible team. And unfortunately, we're bounced first round of the playoffs that year unexpectedly. I mean, they probably could have won the Super Bowl that year, but unfortunately things happen. And that was an unfortunate season. But I'm going to go back to 1983. That team started out at 2-3, right? And then they end up winning 4 in a row after. And, part of that helped that they beat 4 pretty lousy teams that year. And that was able to get right, which was good. But there's a common thread in these teams that I'm talking about. And number one, that team got back to its basics, right? It started running the ball more and committed more to running the ball, because they started out in their first losses. They ran the ball like 21, 15 times, things like that. And that was because they, part of it was one game they were just so far behind they had to, but the other games they didn't have to. It was close, and they just kind of gave up on the run. And then they switched to relying more heavily on the run, where they were 40, 44 times, 39 times, 32 times. And that helped get their offense and their confidence back. And also they figured out how to win those close games. And that's what the Broncos this year haven't been able to do. They haven't figured out how to win those close games, and they've had every opportunity to do so. I mean, really, the Broncos could be 0-5 or 5-0. If you think about it, I mean, that was that close, and they made some big mistakes. And the Raiders game was not as close, but that fumble was huge that Gordon coughed up. But the nice thing after that 1983 season, I mean, that was John Elway's rookie year. There was a lot of promise that was to be had. And then you witnessed that promise after that. They didn't give up. They didn't get rid of their star players, trade them away, and try and rebuild all of a sudden. They had their quarterback, they had their coach, and they had, they had that promise. So they went on to win the next 4 seasons. They averaged 11 wins. So even though that season didn't end the way they wanted it, they didn't win a Super Bowl. That next 4, that was a catalyst to the next 4. They figured out how to win. In the next 4 years, they averaged 11 wins, and they went to their second Super Bowl at the end of that 4th year. So there's reason to be hopeful if you don't give up. And the next time that this happened was 1993, right? They started out 3-3. They didn't look very good under Wade Phillips. I mean, I love Wade Phillips. Great defensive coach and a very underrated head coach. He had some stints where he just couldn't put it all together, but that team did the same thing. They went back to their roots, started running the ball, and they figured out how to win the close games. And that team actually won games not against losing teams. There were some solid teams that they beat that year. They beat KC. It was 9-4. They beat I think a 6-4 Pittsburgh Steelers team that year. I mean, they really kind of put it together, and that was a catalyst to move into the next few seasons. And these are seasons that they actually went to the playoffs. They lost the first round, but they went to the playoffs. And those are why that's important. Is if other players around the league watch the Broncos give up and not want to win and blow it up, why do you think that they're going to come to this team next year over the free agency? They're not. So this is important to maybe they're not going to win the Super Bowl this year. I mean, they're not they don't seem like contenders because of their injuries and the issues and their coach. But this is we got to play the team has to play the long game here. They've got to think about the next 2 to 3 years after. And in 1993, 3 years later, they were winning their first of two Super Bowls. And yeah, they got rid of their coach, brought Mike Shanahan in, and he started to um, institute their new scheme and everything like that. But he Shanahan relied heavily on free agents that year, brought in some really good ones and some good ones that came before he even got there because of what they did in '93. In my opinion, they made some trades and voila, they were actually 4 years later they're winning their first Super Bowl. So and they went to the playoffs 3 years after that as well. So you got to think about the long game in this situation. And then 2000, same kind of thing. 2-3, people were down on them. They didn't have their quarterback, although Brian Greasy had one spectacular year out of a bunch of mediocre years. And it's the same thing. They went 2-3, and then they won 8 of their next 9 games. They went 8-1, and they got back to their roots again, running the football and figuring out how to win close games. And that team also beat some pretty good teams as well. I mean, 8-2 Raiders team they beat, 8-5 New Orleans team. I mean, these weren't pushovers by any means, but they figured it out. They figured how to win the close games, and they figured out how to make the running game work. Now, I do have some, I guess, reservations about how well they can run the ball, and I think the interior of the offensive line this year, they're not doing their job correctly most of the time. And I think that the biggest reason is they're not able, for whatever reason. I mean, I saw Reisner not be able to disengage quick enough to get to the second level. And when you're in that zone blocking scheme that they're trying to run, that's important. The reading to get to, knowing to get to that secondary level, because you've got one blocker tying up on the man that was close to you. So you need to move to that next second level. And Cushenberry, Reisner, and Glasgow have not been doing that effectively. Now you get Miners back. He's a beast, I think, and he can move very well for his size. That's going to see some changes coming. He might actually see some changes at center after he comes back. I don't know. They seem to be sticking with Cushenberry, but once those interior offensive linemen can figure out how to get to that second level, you're going to see the running game start to open up a little bit more. So that's another promising thing that you have to really think about going forward. So get that running game going, figure out how to win close games. And I'll tell you the one last one, which I don't like to talk about that often because it was the Tim Tebow years, and he gets all the credit for for turning that team around. But it really wasn't Tim Tebow. I mean, he was the one that figured out how to win at the end of games. Obviously, he was terrible until the last 2 minutes, and then all of a sudden he became one of the greatest quarterbacks ever for 2 minutes of the game. But that team again was down bad, and part of it getting back to the running game, and part of that was Tim Tebow. They changed the offense, and he obviously was a huge part of that running game. But they figured out how to win the close games, and they ended up going to the playoffs at 8-8. Luckily, they kind of backed into it, but they beat some good teams too that year, and in the last minute. So those are some seasons that you look to say they turned it around well enough that then next year, I mean, you get in that season, you get Peyton Manning the next year, you get a bunch of other free agents, and you're winning, 14, 13, 12 games, and you end up with 2 Super Bowl appearances and a Super Bowl victory. So giving up, I mean, I could see giving up back when you watch Vance Joseph with no quarterback, or Vic Fangio with no quarterback, trying to rebuild, starting over. Fine, I get that. This is not the year to just blow it all up and start over. Okay, Dom's coming in. Dom, thank you for joining this morning. Appreciate it. Good morning, Thomas Scott, Broncos country. It is a must-win Monday night. Let's go, Denver Broncos for life. Dom, I appreciate you coming in from Facebook. I love seeing it when you jump on here. Really appreciate the support. Absolutely, this is a must-win on Monday night, and if they lose in Monday night football, I mean, their season's pretty much over, really, for playoff hopes or anything like that. And I mean, it's pretty much dwindling as it is. But the Chargers are a pretty good team. So losing it was, if they lose that game, fine. I mean, it can be expected. I mean, really, just how they perform is going to be huge. But I do think they can actually win that game. I think they can pull that game out. I mean, nobody's given them a chance, but think about it. The Chargers cannot stop the run. So if the Broncos can get their running game going, Russell Wilson can kind of lean on that running game for a little bit, get his rhythm. I mean, they could beat this Chargers team with a poor defense. I mean, the Chargers went out and spent big money on a defense, and they're terrible. They went out and got big names, J.C. Jackson and Khalil Mack. They went out to get these big stars, and it's not done anything for them. Now, I mean, they got a great quarterback who obviously knows how to throw the ball. Good, he's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the league going forward, probably, in Justin Herbert. But the Broncos can take this game. So, I'm not going to be disappointed if they lose because, I guess it's going to be, I'll be disappointed in how they lose. If they just roll over and get whipped on Monday night, then that's going to be rough. But if they can figure out how to run the ball, score some points, make it a close game or pull out the victory, then it, it's reason to celebrate because that could be the catalyst to moving forward. And I'll tell you, even though we've watched the Broncos be down bad this last 6 years, they've been able to beat the Chargers, even though the Chargers were a better team that year. So, I mean, I think they've got a shot. So, thank you for that comment, and I hope that I hope that they win. I mean, obviously, we all want to watch them win, and fans that really care about the team don't want to see a big, bunch of losses. And I mean, why? They don't have a high draft pick anyway. They traded their first round draft pick away. So there's no reason for them to blow it all up and try and try to rebuild in the draft, and it'd be foolish too anyway. I mean, it'd be completely foolish. I mean, even George Payton's had some great drafts, but here we are looking at some of those players that Javonte Williams is injured, so he's not even playing. So keep your star players, play hard, and keep moving forward. Got another comment coming in here. Ashish, thank you for joining from Facebook. I appreciate it. This is the first time I've seen you on Legends of Mile High. Hope you stick around because we do talk a lot of history here. So she's commenting, I don't think they will keep Hackett for long if he keeps winning 6-7 games. They invested a lot in Wilson. They didn't keep Fangio even when he didn't have a QB and was winning 7 games. Yeah, that'll be interesting with the new ownership, what their decisions are. I mean, it seems like I have a hard time thinking that they're going to get rid of Hackett right away. I mean, he's looked bad. Don't get me wrong. He has looked bad at the end of games, making the wrong decisions. But like I said earlier in the show, the players have to make those plays. You can point to plays that they narrowly missed. I mean, obviously Brandon McManus missed the field goal, and he's always trying to talk coaches into letting him kick those long field goals. So, put your money where your mouth is and make the kick. Don't go out there and miss it. I mean, it was a wrong decision. Don't get me wrong, but you got to make that kick. And then, the other just missing receivers, narrowly not getting the touchdown. I mean, players got to make those plays. And, I was really down on Hackett early because I did not see the scheme that was getting people open. I didn't see him sticking to the West Coast principles or the zone, wide zone scheme early on. But since then, I've started to see things open up. I see open receivers and they're just missed, poor throws, things like that. The Broncos are using more zone concepts. And once that, like I said, that interior line starts to figure out how to get to the second level, they are they're going to start turning this thing around, and that's a big if. I mean, I'm down on Hackett because of the mental errors. I mean, that's inexcusable. Mental errors, stupid penalties, false starts. You know, Melvin Gordon fumbling the ball. He should have been out of that. He shouldn't have been carrying the ball after his. I mean, especially his second fumble, but let alone his first fumble. So there's definitely some issues with Hackett and the way he approaches coaching the game, but there is some element of promise. Watch the all 22, see open players getting schemed open. Uh, that's what giving me a little bit of promise that his plays are starting to come together. So maybe his decision making, in game will start to come together as well, and also that kind of attitude towards being mentally sound. That's the big thing. That's where I really need to see him turn it around, and that has to be on the field, watching these mental errors go away. Lawrence Rivera has a comment. What if we demote Hackett to offensive coordinator, bring back Fangio as our defensive coordinator, and bring in Eric Bieniemy? Well, Lawrence, I appreciate you coming in here, and thank you for being a supporter of this show. See you in here often. I really appreciate it. I'll address all three of these things. Fangio's not coming back. And frankly, I think the defense is playing quite well. So there's no really need for Fangio to come back as a defensive coordinator. I don't think anybody would take the offensive coordinator position after being head coach, nor I don't think they would offer it. That would be a first time that I can even recall that someone like decided to stay with the team, but to be demoted from head coach. Usually it's they're gone. And Eric Bieniemy, he's a beneficiary to Andy Reid, obviously, but he has a multitude of problems and there's a lot of reasons why he's not been hired as a head coach, and it has nothing to do with his skills as offensive coordinator. It's other things. So I don't think. I mean, it's going to be teams just have passed Eric Bieniemy over for a few reasons, and I think. I think him as a head coach is probably not something that's going to happen. And I don't know if he would end up being a good head coach just based on the problems he's had in the past and being a beneficiary of Andy Reid. So I don't think that's going to happen. What I do think that the possibility is that they fire Hackett. They get tired of that, his problems in game management and lack of mental focus for the team, and they bring somebody else as head coach. But I don't think they're gonna fire ever. I mean, the guy's got the defense playing incredible. Look at the injuries that the defense have had, and they're still playing really good. I mean, they've lost their star player, Randy Gregory. I mean, I did not like that signing to begin with because he missed more games than he's played, but he was playing pretty darn good, and he's gone now on injured reserve. Josie Jewell has missed tons of time. Justin Simmons has been out on injured reserve for the last 4 weeks, and they still have played pretty darn well. I mean, they're still one of the top defenses statistically and points wise in the NFL. So, I don't see that. I don't see Fangio needed to be back, but they definitely have to do something different on the offensive side of the ball. Something has to change. And I don't know if that means to bring in a new play caller or Hackett just finally gets it. I don't know. Dom, coming with a comment, offense playbook. Obviously, it's too complicated for our guys. They need to do something about that. Yeah, I think that was true early on. I think the West Coast principles, it is complicated because you have to be on the same page, and we saw that they weren't. I mean, the principles of West Coast offense, and you can actually watch the show a few shows back when I had Dr. Emmett Smith on here talking about the West Coast offense principles. But early on, I could see it. The main key is the receivers have a route tree that they have at their disposal, and they have to read the defense in that play to determine what route to run, and the quarterback has to read the same route. So I think early on that's complicated and that's hard to get on the same page. And you could see the timing wasn't there, and you still see. I mean, last week I saw it a few times too, where Russell Wilson's throwing to nobody early on in that game. So that is partly true, but these players are the best of the best, right? I mean, they're playing in the NFL for a reason. If they can't get the complicated playbook, then something's wrong. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think they can get it, and I think that they will end up getting. I start to see pieces of them starting to get that. So even though it is complicated, they'll finally figure it out. And if they can't, then they're in the wrong offense, and they need to make changes. Albert Knoppers, how you doing? I'm glad you're coming in with the morning, Thomas. I appreciate you coming in, Albert. I hope you're enjoying that hat still. I'm glad that you're coming in and supporting the show. I appreciate it. And if anybody's not going to give up on this team, it's Albert. I mean, you've been a strong supporter of this show and Mile High Huddle in general. So appreciate it. I'm going to jump into one more comment here. Jeremy Sean's coming in. Sometimes these things bring a team together. I don't know why we have been in the national media's crosshairs, but I think everything happens for a reason. Well, I hope you're right, Jeremy. I'm not unfortunately not a big believer of everything happens for a reason. And I mean, I guess I have my reasons for that. But they are in the crosshairs. And part of that is they're playing on prime time. So you got primetime games where they put out some duds, and then you've got the Broncos definitely went out and went and got Russell Wilson, and high hopes were everywhere. And and a lot of times, I mean, a lot of these other fans and a lot of media pundits, there's a little bit of jealousy for the Broncos. Their run of success was really good. In the Pat Bullen era. So there's a lot of reasons why they want to jump on them. And, it's all for entertainment. Whatever they can do to get people riled up or talking or watching their show or whatever, they definitely do that. But you're right. There does need to be something that brings this team together. And like I pointed out, those other years, those other seasons where they went back to their roots, right? And I know that the game has changed, right? I get it. It's a passing league, not the same as it was back in 83 and 93. But the Broncos can get back to running the football for many reasons. But number one, if you can kind of rely on that, even if it's not, getting 160 yards a game, rely on that running game, because then you've got more of a chance to do some bootlegs that really fit Russell Wilson. I mean, if you can get the defense to, so I've seen too many times where the defense isn't respecting that the run game's going to be, really, that they're going to hand it off, really. And, the defensive end or outside linebacker stays home, and, the rollout gets, the bootleg gets, squashed right away. So there's a lot of reasons to do it. But number one is let Russell Wilson get his confidence back, get in a rhythm, run the ball, do some short passing, something to kind of get that started. And once that clicks, things will start to turn around. And I don't know what the catalyst is going to be. It really should be Coach Hackett. Hackett should be the one that rights the ship. I don't know if he's got it in him to do it. So if he doesn't, then it's up to the players. The players need to step up. And that's why they need to not quit, right? Because if these players really want to have success going forward, they need to show that they don't give up. They're behind this team. They're playing hard for this team, and they're moving forward. So that's where I'm at. And fans, if you want to give up and go watch something else or whatever, I mean, that's up to you. But like I said earlier in the show, I've invested a lot of time watching this team, and there's been some ups and downs. I've seen a lot of downs, and I've seen a lot of ups, and this has been a rough stretch. It's been a real rough stretch. So I'm waiting for it to turn around, and there are pieces in place to turn it around. Especially the number one is we have a great quarterback, and I know he's struggling, but this is a 5-game. People are jumping on him after 5 games. I mean, that's a small sample size. I mean, like I had somebody jumping in my mentions about the defense in the first quarter of the first half of the first game, talking about how they were terrible. And it's like, yeah, you're looking at one half of and now they're one of the better defenses in the league. So 5 games is a small sample size to give up on Russell Wilson after 10 years of being an elite quarterback. And frankly, he would have to have had something major happen to fall off the cliff suddenly. And I haven't seen it. He's been injured. He hurt his finger, and he has a lat injury, but he's not going to fall off the cliff immediately unless it was a major, more significant injury. But I'll point out that Dan Marino ruptured his Achilles tendon, had to wear a special shoe even and his play dropped off, but he still had two really good seasons compared to other quarterbacks. I mean, two top 400 seasons after having that happen to him. And Dan Marino's, he's the owner of the best season of all time, adjusted for era. No doubt about that. He's a great quarterback, but he had a huge drop off, but he still played well. Elite quarterback, and he still had a couple great years even after that major injury. All right, so if there aren't any more comments going forward, I'm going to start to wrap up the show. I do have a couple ideas about the show. I think one of them is going forward, maybe a little game that we can play during the show where you throw a career stat line in the comments, and I'll see if I can guess who that is. Obviously, it would have to be. I mean, I'm still working out. Can't throw out like one reception or something like that. But career stat line. Try and challenge me, see if I can get it, and if you can stump me, going forward, that maybe you win something. I don't know. I'll have to figure it out, but something interesting like that. So one last comment, Eric Hein coming in. Thank you for coming in. I appreciate the support. I appreciate the comment, and I appreciate you saying this. Thank you. I think all of Bronco country need to hear this. Yeah, and I hope that Broncos country does hear this. Obviously, I'm not every person in Broncos country is watching the show, which would be cool if they did. But there needs to be some. It's a lot of negativity, and I'll be the first to admit. After that Indianapolis Colts game, I was down and I was negative, and it was like I just wanted to move on to something good. But the more I thought about it, the more I looked at what's going on, the more I looked at the team, the more I looked at the team of the past. There's a chance to still turn this around, and maybe they're not going to win the Super Bowl, but there has been chances in the past where they have actually made it back to the playoffs, like 2 and 3. So it's not over yet. So I appreciate you saying that, and I hope Broncos country can like turn their negativity around, and I really, really hope, and more importantly, that the Broncos themselves can turn it around. And I think they're on the cusp of doing that. There's been, like I said, errors that have kept them from winning those close games, and they need to figure out how to win those close games. But again, if you've invested a lot of time in this team, you bought a lot of merchandise, you've invested much time. It's not time to give up yet. It definitely isn't. Don't give up. Lawrence Rivera coming back in. What other head coaches are getting fired that we could possibly use as a secondary staff? Well, I know Matt Rule got fired in Carolina, but I don't think they need him. I mean, maybe, I don't know, but I think he's probably going to end up back in college. I don't know. The thing is, the Broncos have brought in plenty of coaches to help with this team. They brought in the advisor and Dom Capers, I believe. And, they brought in recently brought in to help with game management. So they have a lot of coaches in place. And I'll tell you, I mean, the special teams coach has been doing a great job too. Dwayne Stukes, I mean, and Evero, they're both those coordinators are doing a great job. It's the offense that isn't getting it. Right. And but they're still, like I said, they're on the cusp of getting it. I mean, you watch the improvement in the scheme. And from the first game to this last game, people are open. They just need to perform, and the players have to perform on the field. You can talk about all the coaches issues all you want, but in the end, the players have to execute and make those plays, and they haven't been, but they're close. So it just takes a small change in something to make those close plays be the game-winning plays. Albert, thank you for coming back in. Albert Knoppers. Russ and Hack will figure this out. Go Broncos and Mile High Huddle for life. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to doubt Russell Wilson. I mean, just based on what he's done in the past, like I don't want to doubt it. I do have my concerns about Nathaniel Hackett, and I don't want to be negative about him, but he has his issues. But again, there was promise. I've seen the scheme is getting better, and he needs to change a few small things. But again, like I said, one last time, the players have to make the plays on the field. I don't care how good your coach is. If the players aren't making that one play that they need to make, then the team loses. That's the margin of error in the NFL is so small that one play can make or break the game. Saubert dropping a pass, or the touchdown pass, or Tomlinson toe being an inch out of on the line, or missing Russell Wilson, missing KJ Hamler in the end zone. Those you don't if you don't miss those things, this team is not going to be talked about in the media as being awful, right? So that's just the way it is in NFL. It's a game of inches, like Vince Lombardi said. It's a game of inches, and if you're not the one that is winning that inch, then you lose. So, and I think the Broncos, I'm hopeful at least that the Broncos will put that together. But they need to get back to their roots. Like I said, they need to rely a little bit more on the running game and get some more emphasis on that. Even if it's not super effective, they still need to run the ball. They still need to hand it off more than 15 times a game. They need to really commit to it and start building off of that, throwing some bootlegs, and other things. Jeremy Bales coming in from Facebook. Thank you very much. Good morning. I'll be there at SoFi. Go Broncos. That's great, man. That is a cool stadium. I really want to go. It is one of those new stadiums. I think that that the price of tickets are reasonable. So I've always wanted to go. I mean, it's a bit of a drive from here to go to SoFi, but man, that's going to be awesome. I hope that it turns out to be a great game for you. I hope the Broncos win. But yeah, enjoy that. That is a cool stadium, and enjoy, man. I really, I'm kind of envious. That's going to be a lot of fun, and hopefully there's a lot of orange in the stands. The Chargers have a hard time filling up that stadium, so maybe Broncos fans will fill it up for them. Okay, we are at the end of this show, so I'm going to wind it down. And as usual, I have Mile High Legend for you. So tune in next week. We'll definitely have some other things to talk about Friday morning. The show's starting to build a little bit. So I appreciate people that are coming in and watching it. So let's keep it going. And don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel and like the show, and also follow me on Twitter. I've got some takes during the week that are fun, and follow Scott. He's great football mind too, even though he's back behind the scenes on this show. He's got some great input. So definitely support the show and go to the actual website and read some of the articles, because that's where a lot of this information for these shows come from. So thank you very much. Now it's time for the Mile High Legend. The greatest undrafted wide receiver never quit. Rod Smith came into the league as a college free agent and had every reason to call it quits, but he never did. Not even on a single play. His story from meager beginnings to a Hall of Fame caliber wide receiver in the NFL is nothing short of remarkable. He grew up in the projects in Texarkana, Arkansas. His family was poor, and like many unfortunate families like his, they made ends meet how they could, and often they used food stamps. But he was able to propel himself from those hard times by never giving up on the game of football, and in a small part by carrying with him a small token to remind him of those hard times. Smith was talented enough to earn a spot on the small college of Missouri Southern State University on the football team. And when he was finished, he held conference records in receiving yards and touchdowns. And he was awarded with the first team All-American honor, among other awards, and was a finalist for the Harlan Hill Award, which is a huge accomplishment. And even with his spectacular college career, he was overlooked in the NFL draft. And steadfast in his pursuit of playing in the NFL, he signed as a college free agent in Denver in 1994. But he earned no playing time that season, and one could easily think of ending their NFL dream. But not Smith. He continued to work for playing time. And when he finally got that shot, his first reception was a game-winning touchdown in 1995. Now, even though that was a stellar first reception, he still didn't get much of a chance. That year or even the year after. I mean, he only caught 6 passes in 1995, and the following year only caught 16. And again, many would wallow in self-pity and then give up. But Smith kept on. And finally, 1997, his career skyrocketed. He caught 70 passes for 1,180 yards. And what followed was 8 1,000-yard receiving seasons. And over a 2-year period from 2000 to 2001, it can be argued, and I've argued it myself, that he was the best receiver in the NFL. And that's competing for that title with the likes of Marvin Harrison, Terrell Owens, and Randy Moss in their prime. That's an astounding feat. But Rod Smith really earned that. And when he finally did retire, he did so as the most prolific receiver in Denver Broncos history, in top 20 all time in the NFL. He is really one of the greatest receivers in NFL history. But Smith never quit, and he never quit on a single play. And the most famous one that maybe many people remember is when Julius Peppers intercepted Jake Plummer in the end zone, on one end zone, and sprinted, almost running free for a touchdown, 100-yard touchdown, except Smith pursued him, determined to not let him reach that end zone. He ran Peppers down at the 3-yard line. And when asked after the game why he put so much effort on that play when others would have just given up, he said that if that play was the last one of his career in the NFL, would he want it to be remembered as, or would he want to remember that he gave up or he gave his all? And he also didn't like other people quitting either. When a young running back ran out of bounds instead of fighting for more yards after a nice run, Smith scolded him for giving up. He said, "Fight for every inch. You never know if the defender is going to miss the tackle or take a bad angle." And it's true. Running out of bounds is ending the play when so many other things can happen. And that's who Rod Smith was, the epitome of perseverance. And helping him to persevere through that all was a food stamp that he carried in his wallet, even though he had made enough money to never worry about it again. He did it to remind himself where he came from, how hard it was to get there, and how difficult it was to stay there. His never quit attitude made him the greatest receiver in Denver Broncos history and earned him a spot on the Broncos Ring of Fame. And that's your Mile High legend. Thank you for joining, and have a great day, Broncos fans.